We actually had two big issues this year, and they were quite different from each other. The first big issue that we spent a lot of time advising organisations on was ongoing requests to work flexibly and ongoing requests to work remotely. And that's not something that our government has legislated for yet. Most contracts of employment provide for fixed working hours and for a fixed place of work. So this is part of the rollover of COVID. And it is something that employers and organisations are still continuing to struggle with and probably will do for some time into the future. So that was the first issue. And then the second issue was a more technical one. We had for the first time this year an obligation on employers to report on the gender pay gap. Now, this is something that's already been done in other countries in Europe, but it became law and mandatory in Ireland during the course of 2022. Organisations had to pick a snapshot date in June and then to report 6 months from that snapshot date. So we've already had some organisations report on their gender pay gap, but we anticipate lots of reports being published on organisations' websites throughout the month of December 2022. So there are two pieces of legislation in particular which are going to impact employers in 2023. The first of those is our amended protected disclosures legislation. And that legislation amends previous legislation, but it places a much higher onus on organisations. And that onus includes an obligation to have very clear channels for employees to blow the whistle. It extends the scope of those who can blow the whistle, and it also extends the definition of penalisation. So it'll definitely be one to watch for 2023, and it's one in respect of which I anticipate quite a lot of advice and perhaps an increase in litigation as well. The second piece of legislation I envisage occupying employers' minds in 2023 is the very recently published Work-Life Balance Bill. Now, that bill does three things. The first thing it does is that it provides for leave for employees to take care of specified persons with medical issues. That's the first thing. The second thing it does is that it provides for leave for employees who are victims of domestic abuse. So the third thing the draft bill does is that it provides for a right to request flexible working. Now, this request for flexible working can encompass a request for remote working. But what's interesting about the draft bill is that it's only a right to request flexible/remote working for caring purposes. So it's not a general right. And that caring has to be for either a child or a specified person, again, somebody close to the employee who requires care for a serious medical condition. So it's not quite the all-encompassing right to request remote working that we were envisaging or anticipating or we had been promised. And whether that's something that the government is going to do in separate legislation remains to be seen. 2023 is definitely going to be interesting for employers. So on top of our protected disclosures legislation, the requirement to report on the gender pay gap, which is going to expand to include other smaller employers. We also now have statutory sick pay, which is something that every employer is going to have to implement. We have new legislation effective from December 2022 around the payment of tips. And we also have an interesting economic climate, and how that's going to impact on employers remains to be seen. It may or it may not result in restructurings and redundancies, but I don't have a crystal ball, so we'll see.